So today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite fast aperture 50mm lenses, more specifically the Leica Summilux 50 f1.4 version 11891. So I actually own this lens for over 2 years, which is longer than what I own my Leica M11, because I actually own this lens and used to adapt it to my Sony bodies with great results. So in this video, we're gonna be talking about shooting with this lens when it comes to street photography, portraiture, which is something that I do a lot with this lens, architecture, and as well as the everyday casual shooting. So I'm also gonna be comparing this lens versus the much more expensive options, such as the Noctilux 50mm f1.2, and I'm gonna tell you why I still prefer this lens. And if you stick around until the end of the video, I'll give you my conclusions, but also I'm gonna tell you how you can download for free my preset pack that I have created to create a lot of the images that you are gonna see in this review. So this one is gonna be a very interesting one, so stick around. Alright, so let's clear out some specs right out of the way, and there are gonna be several versions about this lens. First of all, the version that I'm going to be talking about today is going to be the aluminum, which usually comes in a black finish. There's also going to be a silver version, which is made out of brass, and that one is going to be heavier. I don't own that version, but the one that I do own is a spin-off of this lens, which is the Monochrom edition. Now, the Monochrom edition is the same optical formula, which is 8 elements arranged in 5 groups, and that one is also going to be constructed all in brass with a black finish. Now, let's talk about the aperture, because this lens is going to have a widest aperture of f1.4 that goes all the way to f16, and when it comes to the aperture blade system, we are going to have 9. Now, when it comes to lens hood, this lens is actually going to have a built-in lens hood. But from my experience, using the lens hood or not using the lens hood when it comes to flaring, you are going to obtain almost the same result. I guess it's one of the reasons why Leica has added this tiny little lens hood. But every time I use this lens, I don't even bother, because this lens, it is great when it comes to flaring resistance. Now, speaking about weight, the aluminum version is gonna weigh at 335 grams, which is a really nice weight for an everyday lens. Now, let's talk about the ergonomic and handling about this lens, because this is one of the main reasons why this lens has been my go-to 50mm for fast shooting. And as you can see, this lens is fairly compact. You know, I'm comparing it right now with my other 50mm f1.4 options that I have from Leica. And as you can see, this one is very tiny. Now, I've shot this lens on M16, like I mentioned before. Now I shoot this lens on the SL3 as well. And I've shot this lens in my Sony camera, and the handling is always superb. Now, let's talk about using the rangefinder to focus with this lens. And the first thing is that this lens is going to have very little to none rangefinder blockage. You may see a little bit of blockage at the bottom right corner, but for the most part, shooting with a rangefinder in this lens is really awesome. The other reason is that this lens is really easy to nail focus at f1.4 using the rangefinder. First of all, because how smooth the focusing ring is going to be, and also because this lens is just really easy to focus with. And let's start talking about the fun part. What does it feel like shooting with this lens? I'll start talking about street photography. Now, when it comes to street photography, this one is kind of like one of my go-to lenses for street, even though I use the 28 a lot. But with the 28mm, I tend to use the zone focusing method more than actually manual focusing every single image. And because of the fast aperture of this lens, you are gonna find me doing street photography at f1.4 very often. And like I mentioned before, it is so easy to focus with this lens that I have no problem acquiring focus on the go with this lens. I may also stop down this lens, you know, at f11 a lot of the time just to make the focusing a little bit faster. But this one is gonna be the one lens that I like to shoot open wide when it comes to street photography. Everything that you shoot with this lens, specifically even when I shoot on a monochrome sensor, looks kind of like coming out of a movie. Take a look at these images right now. And it's one of the reasons why, if you want to have that instant vibe or mood with your images, this lens is going to deliver. Alright, so let me share my experience shooting portraits with this lens. So the first thing that we have to mention is that when I shoot portrait, I like to have an electronic viewfinder. And a lot of the times, you know, I may put my VisoFlex in this camera in the Leica M11 just to make sure that I'm nailing the eye in focus. But this particular lens is one of the lenses that I can use the rangefinder and nail focus in the eye at f1.4 almost every single time. I don't know what it is. You know, I know that this lens has no focus shifting issues. I guess that's one of the reasons why, but acquiring focus in the eye using the rangefinder with this lens is very, very easy. Now let's talk about my experience shooting with this lens for the casual photography, everyday carry. And like I mentioned before, the main reason is going to be the compact size, the fast aperture, and how easy it is to focus with this lens. Now, another thing that why I opt for this lens is because some of the other 50mm options that I own, they are gonna have some limitations when it comes to the minimum focusing distance. This one is gonna cap at 0.7, which is the same limitation of the rangefinder. So focusing with the rangefinder, you know, is perfect. Now, even when I use my 2023 option, of course, the lens has a closer focusing distance of 0.45, but for that, I have to use the back of the screen or the VisiFlex. All right, so let's talk about bokeh. We all wanna know how this lens renders bokeh, and for those that actually shoot with this lens, you are gonna know that the bokeh coming out of this lens is magical, it is outstanding. Now remember, this lens has 9 aperture blades and the bokeh is going to be very round when shot open wide. But I actually find that this lens, when you stop it down, maybe f2, f2.8, f4, and even up to f5.6, you may start getting that start to fine bokeh ball, but you really have to look for it. Other than that, this lens is going to have an amazing bokeh. Take a look at the transition between the image in focus and the background separation, the smoothness of the bokeh, you know, the rendition of the ball. You know, shooting with this lens is really difficult to make a bad picture, to be honest with you. Everything looks so magical. And, you know, one of the reasons why shooting with this lens is very addicting. So when it comes to the bokeh, I think that this lens is the best bang for the buck, in my opinion. All right, let's talk about vignetting, because this lens, it is going to have vignetting when shot open wide. But to be honest with you, unlike some other lenses with vignetting, this vignetting is very gradual and smooth. And it goes all the way from the corners almost to the center of the image. I find this to be a nice appealing feature on the image because I think it adds to the drama and the cinematic look of the image. It helps you focus on what's in the center of the frame. So for that reason alone, I never correct the vignetting on this lens. So let's talk about sharpness and chromatic aberration. Well, first of all, the sharpness of this lens is going to be outstanding. Even when you shoot this lens at f1.4, take a look at this image. I don't foresee needing anything sharper than this lens. And this has been one of the main reasons why I don't shoot with my 50mm Apple that often anymore. First of all, with this lens, you know, I get faster aperture. And to be honest with you, the image quality is really, really sharp. Now, when it comes to chromatic aberration, it is something that I don't notice in this lens. I know it is there in some areas. I mean, you're gonna have to look for it. Of course, in areas of, you know, high contrast, you may see it more defined. But just like the vignetting, it is something that I don't bother to correct in post because I'm pretty happy with the image quality that I get out of this, you know, camera and lens, you know, straight up. Now let's talk about the look of this lens. And right off the bat, this lens is going to be an uberly modern lens. And I think that this lens actually helped me understand the term micro contrast, because everything you shoot, you are going to be able to see detail even in the smallest things on the image. You are gonna see great level of detail. And again, it's one of the reasons why this lens is my go-to lens for pretty much anything that I wanna shoot. If you have shot with Sony cameras, because, you know, I have, you know, this one is gonna be more in line with G Master, kind of like rendition and performance. And by the way, I am going to be comparing right now, just for the sake of it, this lens and this setup versus my Sony a7CR with a 50mm f1.4 G Master from Sony. Take a look at the different size of the lenses. And would I recommend this lens? And let me sum it up. If you have the money, go and buy this lens right now. It is really impossible to kind of like be disappointed with this lens. It is a lens that is super easy to carry. The value proposition for what you get, even though $2,500, $2,000, still a lot of money. But when you're talking about Leica glass, I mean, it is not that bad. And remember, if you like a little bit more of heft of these lenses, you can actually go with the brass version. You actually opt for whatever is lighter and smallest. So this lens is gonna be a great proposition for a lens that's gonna wanna make you carry every day. You have the minimum focusing distance of 0.7, so it's really good for almost every scenario situation. And it is the lens that if you have to buy one lens, probably this one is the lens that I would tell you buy first. So Impossible to go wrong with it, and I think you're gonna be very, very happy. And because you have made it this far into this video, like I promised before, I am going to tell you how you can download for free my preset pack that I have created to grade some of the images that you have seen right here in this video. Go on my Instagram at Gaston Shutters, add me there, and also add me on Threads. And on the bio, you're gonna see that link right there. Click in there, you're gonna see this pop up, and then click on the free Lightroom preset. Also, there's gonna be a folder there that you are gonna find some instruction, read them, because it's gonna teach you how to get the utmost out of those presets. And just for the record, you know, all my presets don't include exposure or white balance, and you can always use those presets sparingly. You never have to use them at 100%. So read the instructions. I think it's gonna help you to get the utmost out of them. But guys, if you had enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so for more content like this one. And until then, I'll see you in the next video.